Surrounded by a nimbus of near-blinding light, a strange creature appears around the corner of the ancient Astral Temple. It is a terror to behold. Humanoid in nature, but with proportions that are all wrong. Far too elongated to be any type of race that you've ever seen before. That's when you see its head snap towards you. You notice a sickening radiant light pour out from its two unblinking eyes, its mouth agape, giving insight into a world of madness housed within the creature. Roll initiative. Hello and welcome to Monster of the Week, the show where we dig up creatures from past editions of D&D and other tabletop games and bring them to light for use in your current 5th edition D&D campaign. My name is Josiah, also known as Dungeon Dad, and today we have a very special episode in store. And this is a super special episode of Monster of the Week because we made it all the way to 100 episodes. 100 episodes! Kobe. So with all that out of the way, let's talk about what exactly it means to be alive. I mean, do we even have a soul when you die? Do you go somewhere else? Or is it just like flicking a switch, you know what I'm saying? But fortunately, in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, gods and deities are actual tangible forces that when you pray to them and worship them, they give you superpowers and let you cast lightning out of your hands. Like, I'm not saying all gods need to do that, but like, what up, J-Man? Like, what's going on? Just let me smite someone like one time. That's all I'm asking. But I know what you're thinking. How does that relate to today's creature? And well, the answer is quite simple. The Shining Child is an Eldritch abomination. It is a being comprised of corrupted light. It is a being born on the Astral Plane, literally manifested of the cosmic stuff that exists between worlds. They are equally beautiful as they are sickening. These beings literally made of light that suggests some type of corruption and wrongness in their own existence. And the big driving factor in that is the fact that Shining Children don't know where they come from. They have no creator or no god they can turn to, and when everyone else in the multiverse seems to know their place and have a function, they're basically left out orphans of the multiverse. Due to their innate, extreme magical nature, they are very knowledgeable about the arcane, and they spend all of their time trying to unlock the secrets of where they come from and why. Something that the greater part of humanity can probably empathize with to some degree, at least in the real world. So today we are going to talk about just exactly what these creatures can do in combat so we can sort of understand their abilities. And then of course we're going to get into some plot hooks and some speculation about maybe where these creatures actually did come from, along with some ways that you can use them in your campaign. And one side note I would like to make, as always, is there is a full stat block in the description below this video. So if you like these monsters and you want to use them in your game, everything you need to run them in Dungeons & Dragons is all right there for you in the form of a Google document. So without further ado, let's take a look at some. The Shining Child clocks in at a whopping CR 11. This creature is no joke, but as we go over some of its abilities, you're probably going to be thinking, wow, this thing seems way stronger than a CR 11 monster. Reasonably, if we were looking at stats alone, it would probably be closer to 13 or maybe even 14. But what makes this creature so powerful is simultaneously its greatest weakness, and that is the fact that it is literally made of light. As beings of astral light, they do have a very high charisma score, and that's great for a lot of things in general. However, they have a special trait that allows them to add their +5 charisma to their armor class on top of their dexterity. With their radiant armor, literally their ability to control light can influence the way projectiles and magic affects them. That gives the Shining Child an armor class of 20, which is pretty substantial. However, there is a way to get around this. If the Shining Child should find itself in an area of magical darkness, that natural light can't penetrate through, and it loses that +5 bonus to armor class, bringing its armor class all the way down to 15. For a CR 11 creature, that is shockingly low, especially considering that these guys don't have a ton of hit points. And this is a really cool mechanic, I think, because it allows your characters to use a semi-low level spell like Darkness to shut down a huge defense of the CR 11 monster, making it a lot more vulnerable.
This isn't your average everyday darkness. This is advanced darkness. Hey, if I close my eyes, it doesn't seem so dark.
Now, the only trick to that is not many creatures can see through magical darkness. So yes, the Shining Child isn't going to be able to see, which is great for your party, unless they're specially equipped or have some unique abilities like the Shadow Sorcerer's ability to spend sorcery points and see through their own darkness. They're not going to be able to see the Shining Child either. This will kind of create a weird standoff where your characters will have a much easier target to hit, but they're going to be attacking with disadvantage because they won't be able to see it unless they're prepared in such a way and can bypass that somehow. And going on with this theme of being comprised of light, the Shining Child, of course, does emit bright light for about 120 feet and then another 120 feet of dim light, which means these things are going to be literally lighting up the room wherever they are. Now that bright light, of course, is going to be fairly bright, but if you're close enough that you're within 60 feet of this thing, you're going to have to make a Constitution save or else you're going to be blinded by that light. And this blinding is not just for a few rounds or a few hours, it is a permanent blindness effect. Now, of course, if you make that save once, you're golden. You're immune to the shining light for the next 24 hours. So again, it will reward your party for being prepared to boost their constitution saves because they know they're going to have to save against this brilliant light. Or at the very least, they should bring spells like Greater Restoration that can restore blindness if someone does happen to fail their save and get blinded. So in terms of attacks, this thing has two primary attacks that it can unleash. One of them is called Searing Ray, which is a ranged attack that literally just zaps someone for a bunch of radiant and fire damage. It's a ranged spell attack, fairly straightforward. The other one is called Burning Touch, which is a melee spell attack that also hits a target for some radiant and some fire damage. However, the key with this ability is that if it does manage to actually touch someone, of course they take that damage, but they also have to make a constitution save again, or else they'll have the light within them, their kind of life essence corrupted, and they start burning from the inside. There's a common theme with this creature that it is made of brilliant light, and it looks like it should be some kind of being of purity, but it's corrupted and twisted and very eldritch and wrong. So its touch is making your life essence essentially sort of burn away, and you're going to be taking radiant and fire damage at the start of every turn. And the way you remedy this was actually so interesting to me. It was the thing that made me want to cover this creature. In order to douse the radiant burning, you literally have to go into an area of darkness. The same way you would throw water on someone who was actually on fire, you need to go into an area of natural or magical darkness to put out the burning light. So if you're under the effect of this and you know what to do, you could literally stop burning by just covering yourself up in your cloak and making sure that you're not exposed to any light. This, of course, is hard to do because assuming that you just got touched by the Shining Child, that means it's in the same room as you and it's causing light to cascade everywhere. But again, magical darkness spells are your friend here. Or even just the ability to duck around a corner and get into some area of darkness. I think that's such a neat mechanic, and being able to figure that out will be really rewarding for a player. The key there is that if the players don't know about this ability ahead of time, is to just describe that as the light touches their skin, it's causing this horrible burning pain, almost like radiation. Now, all of that stuff makes for a pretty cool monster, but the true strength of this creature lies in its spell casting. As a being literally formed from the astral sea's magic, this creature is, of course, going to be able to cast a lot of powerful spells. Most of them are themed around light. So it can cast a lot of fire-based spells like Wall of Fire or Flame Strike a limited number of times per day. And of course, it's going to have access to things like Sunbeam and Daylight. Basically just a lot of fire and radiant damage dealing spells, along with some very arcane ones such as True Sight and Teleportation once a day. The spells at this creature's disposal are going to make it very hard to pin down in one place, so it's very likely that this creature will save that use of teleport to flee if it knows it's going to die. But I find with those kind of spells like teleportation that can control whether an enemy lives or dies, it really comes down to how you as a DM choose to play the creature. Because if you're playing this creature in a very aggressive way, maybe it won't have that spell slot to teleport away because it's already used it to teleport on top of the party and attack them. Teleport is a very powerful spell, and there's a lot of different ways you can use it. Of course, if you check the stat block, there's a ton of different spells in there, but the big takeaway here is that this creature has a lot of tools and a lot of options. So with all of that said, let's talk about some If you happen to be running an adventure on the Astral Plane, a Shining Child can be a great random encounter. I mean, even if you just use it as a random battle, it can be a great way to flesh out your world and have them meet this weird creature made of light that they fight for a bit and then it teleports away when it's about to die. But the big thing here is that these creatures are pretty intelligent. They have an intelligence score of 16, which is well beyond the average for most people. Basically meaning they're not just mindless idiots who are going to attack the first thing they see move. Your party could very easily encounter these things and actually speak with it and have it be more of a social interaction and less of a fighty interaction. Perhaps they find some sort of temple on the Astral Plane that's populated by these shining children, and that's where they do a lot of their research on the arcane and magic in search of their origins. Because again, a big thing with these creatures is they don't know where they came from. And neither does anyone else really. There's this little tidbit from the book about how every scholar kind of has their own opinion about what these monsters might be, which gives you a lot of wiggle room to play with as a DM because you can kind of choose whichever one you like the best or whichever one your players find the most fascinating, or you might not even have to choose one at all. Leave it a mystery and that's just as valid. Some people think that they're sort of elementals, almost born of the astral sea the same way a fire elemental would be born of the stuff on the plane of fire. Others think that they're all part of some giant sentient celestial body that's split apart into multitudes of individual entities. Some people think that they're a sort of eldritch corruption from the far realm that's seeking into the astral plane that has become sentient as it interacted with the fabric of the astral plane. And other people think that there's some sort of ancient race that has long since shed their physical body and become this sort of spiritual manifestation that lives solely on the astral plane. I mean, I'm sure you could even come up with your own origin that you think is just as compelling or relevant to your world and go with that. But the point is, their origin is very much up for debate, so that could be a really interesting side quest for your party. Maybe they'll be rewarded with magic items or some other plot-relevant thing if they're able to help the Shining Children with some relevant quest that will help them uncover a tidbit of knowledge or scrap of lore that could possibly lead them one step closer to discovering what their true origin actually is. To set up an adventure like that, I would maybe seed some type of ancient grimoire or tome that is held securely in a fortress on the Shadowfell. This would be a place that the Shining Children, powerful as they are, would not want to go because it is naturally very dark there and there's tons of areas of magical darkness, which is where they are most vulnerable. But they might be willing to give something to your party if they will go to the Shadowfell for them and retrieve this object. I mean, these guys are powerful spellcasters, so they could even use their use of teleport to teleport the party to the Shadowfell and maybe give them a scroll of teleportation or plane shift or whatever to get back to that place on the astral plane. And this would allow for a sort of one-shot style dungeon crawl where your party can go away from the main quest, do this thing in the Shadowfell, which is a really cool location that you don't always get to go to, and then come back, turn in that quest, get the reward, and go on with whatever the main story is. Or you could even make that the main story if you just really want to run an adventure in the Shadowfell and you've been looking for an excuse to do it. Alternatively, if you have a pretty high magic setting in your campaign world going on, you could always use one of these guys as an NPC. Maybe one of them made its way to the material plane and serves as some sort of instructor at a magic school. You could literally have one of these things teaching wizards their arcane secrets in exchange for bits of lore that the wizards have collected over generations. Or if you do want to use them as the straight up major villain of your campaign, it would be very easy to set them up in that role of the sort of beautiful, radiant villain who seems pure and is made of light, but of course is very corrupt and evil under that surface. Maybe they detest the darkness so much because it is so opposite of their nature that they seek to bathe the world in eternal light. Maybe they want to do that by use of some ancient powerful magic item and the players have to beat them to it or stop them from performing some type of terrible ritual. Or if you're running a very high level game, you could use them as minions of some type of demon lord. Grazit comes to mind as this being of immense beauty who is also extremely evil and corrupt under the surface. Or if you don't want them to go full demon worshipy situation, you could have them kind of as minions to a great light elemental. Maybe this huge being of light that exists on the astral plane and is kind of more neutral rather than evil or good for that matter. And on the other side of the spectrum, if you're running a lower level game and you want to use this as the big boss at the end potentially, you could have a group of cultists on the material plane who follow the ancient light, or whatever you want to call it, and they're trying to summon a shining child to their world. And who knows, maybe at the end of the big encounter they succeed and the shining child doesn't want to be summoned to the material plane, kills all of them, and then the party has to contend with it as well. But in any case, whoever you choose to run this monster, I think it's very weird, mysterious, and just will definitely leave an impression on your players. So I'd highly recommend you give him a try. And of course, like I said, if you want to, the stat block is in the description below. And if you are one of my awesome patrons, you can of course find the kind of fancy monster manual style stat block with the art and a little bit of lore and that kind of stuff on the Patreon page. And while you're looking down there, that's where you'll find all of my social media links to Discord, Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. So if you have a suggestion for Monster of the Week and there's a creature that you think is really underrated or just no one knows about and you want to see it brought to light, please leave a comment, tell me all about it, get at me on Twitter, get at me on the Discord. One way or another, if you suggest a monster, I will add it to the list and definitely take a look. So thank you very much for watching. The past 99 episodes, and this one included, have been an absolute joy to work on. I love this community and I love making these videos, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then.